My knowledge of Chinese pronunciation is lacking, so forgive me if my pronunciation is inaccurate. My memory is also deteriorating rapidly, so if I need correction, please feel free to correct me. We begin our trip by flying 17.5 hours from Boston to Beijing, China. Beijing, which is in the top right of this map photo, is the capital of the third or fourth largest country in the world based on land area. Beijing is China's third largest city and was called Peking by the British. The city was laid out during the Ming Dynasty, which ruled from 1368 to 1644. Here we are in Tiananmen Square. In ancient Chinese thought, the earth was square and the heavens were round, so the city was built in a series of concentric squares. Tiananmen Square and the Forbidden City are examples of this concept. Tiananmen Square is famous to many of us because of the photographs of the pro-democracy demonstrations in 1989. This is the gate to the People's Congress. The President and Vice President are elected by the National People's Congress for a 5-year term. All citizens can vote at age 18. Deputies to the People's Congress are elected from each province, based on one deputy for a minimum of 400,000 people. This is the mausoleum housing the body of Mao Zedong, or Mao Tse-tung. These are photos of a war memorial from two perspectives. This is Helen in the Tiananmen Square with the Forbidden City in the background. This is the entrance to the Forbidden City, which was home to the Ming and Qing emperors and is sometimes called the Imperial Palace. It is said to contain 800 ceremonial buildings with a total of 9,999 rooms. It covers 178 acres and was built over a period of 14 years in the early 1400s. The courtyard can hold 100,000 people. It was off limits to the common people, and unless foreigners had special permission to enter, it was off limits to them as well. In 1958, the Chinese phonetic alphabet system called pinyin came into general use. Using characters and numerals similar to the English system, now signs, newspapers, etc. often show both the Chinese characters as well as the pinyin spelling. These are more views of the Forbidden City. These men are playing a Chinese chess game on the sidewalk near our hotel. This is a view of part of the city through our hotel window. We went to see a performance of the Peking Opera in Prince Gong's mansion and garden. The theater can hold 200 people having tea and sweets. These actors are putting on their makeup. The plots of the operas are derived from folk tales, legends, and classical Chinese literature. The actors half sing and half speak in a very high-pitched voice. They performed 3 skits for us: The Crossroad, The Drunken Concubine, and Havoc in Heaven. On each side above the stage, they provided a neon sign which scrolled English commentary to describe the action of each opera. This is a nearby garden. This is the front of a restaurant where we had lunch. We visited the hutongs area by pedicab or rickshaw. The hutongs are very old homes on narrow ancient alleys and lanes. Many of them were built during the Yuan, Ming, and Qing dynasties. Most of the main buildings were quadrangles with a house on each of 4 sides of a courtyard. The best ones had a front and back yard. The ordinary ones were just low houses. The high-class ones were built to the east and west of the Forbidden City, while the ordinary ones were built to the north and south of the city. Many of the buildings were destroyed during the 10 years of the Great Cultural Revolution. Many have been and are being torn down to be replaced by modern buildings. This is our pedicab driver. This is the drum tower. We visited a school in the area. Education is compulsory from the age of 6 to the age 15. This was the exercise period for the day. Mandarin is the primary language, although many ethnic groups use their own dialects in their daily conversations. Small amounts of English I learned at an early age. These 2 girls asked the usual questions, such as, "Hello, how are you? What's your name? How old are you? Where are you from?" etc. After the exercise period, they are allowed a little time to socialize or play games, etc. And then it's back to the classroom. We visited a home in the area to have tea and some snacks that were prepared in this kitchen. When we visit a home, we usually have 5 or 6 people in the group. This is one of the inhabitants of the house sitting next to me at the table. There are 56 Chinese nationalities or ethnic groups in China. The Han group makes up about 94% of the population, with 55 minority ethnic groups making up the rest. The woman in the middle of this photo is the owner of this house, and she is a member of one of those minority groups. We visited the Summer Palace area, which was used by the imperial family during the late Qing dynasty. It covers a 12 square mile area. It was originally built in the 12th century. It was damaged by foreign military forces and was renovated by the Empress Dowager in 1895. Whenever possible, it was used from the middle of April to the middle of October. There was a 2,300-foot covered walkway that took us partway around the lake on the palace grounds. The marble boat was a place to relax, apparently, because it obviously didn't float. We took one of the ferries back across the lake so that we didn't have to walk back all the way. This is a view from the ferry on the lake showing the 2,300-foot covered walkway. We visited a cloisonné factory. Cloisonné ware is sometimes called copper bodyware or wire inlaid enamelware. It requires a complicated process including base hammering, copper wire curving, soldering, enamel filling, enamel firing, polishing, gilding, etc. This is where we tried our hand at painting some of these wares. We visited a section of the Great Wall of China, a short distance from Beijing in the Battling Hills. Construction began in 403 BC, with sections scattered, until 221 through 206 BC, when 300,000 men worked to connect the segments into one almost 1,500 miles long, the longest fortified line ever built. It was about 25 feet high. The towers are 35 to 40 feet high. The towers were placed about 200 to 300 yards apart so that archers in each of two towers could hit someone halfway between them. We visited the Ming tombs. In a valley covering almost 25 square miles, 13 Ming emperors were buried in tombs built from 1409 to 1644. The sacred way leads to the avenue of the animals. Lined with large stone statues of elephants, camels, lions, as well as some mythic beasts. This was a demonstration presented for us at a kung fu school. These are musicians playing in the Temple of Heaven area, a beautiful park-like area. These gentlemen were playing dominoes. This was a large group of people dancing to dance music. There were a huge number of people taking advantage of the day off and the good weather. People exercised, played games, danced, or just relaxed. There were 3 main structures in this huge park-like area. After having spent 4 nights in Beijing, we fly to Shanghai by way of the broken line to the right of the photo. Shanghai is the 2nd largest city in China. The Jade Buddha temple was built to house items brought from India. We went to the new Shanghai circus. There were acrobats and other acts, but no animals. They had motorcycles driving inside this large sphere. They ended up with 5 motorcycles driving at one time inside the sphere. These are views of a garden in a museum. This is a kindergarten we visited in Shanghai. We visited the Yu Yuan Bazaar, which is a square with a garden in the middle and is surrounded by streets filled with shops. They were making dumplings in one of the shops. There are over 100 shops, tea houses, wine houses, snack bars, restaurants, etc. in the area. In the middle of the garden there is a bridge called the Nine Turning Bridge. This is in the Bund area along the waterfront of the Huangpu River. I have never seen so many neon lights in so many different styles. We visited a carpet factory in the area. Helen tries her hand at it. The Gallery of Chinese Minority Nationalities Art on the fourth floor of the Shanghai Museum of Art and History, which was established in 1952. We were coming back to Shanghai on a tour bus. When we got close to Shanghai, the traffic was as bad as Route 93 at rush hour. So a few of us decided to see if we could beat the bus back to the hotel by taking the subway. Unfortunately, a man was taking a very long time purchasing what I think was a monthly pass, and we missed 2 trains. So we didn't beat the bus after all. It was estimated that there are about 10 million motor vehicles in China. No one seems to have estimated the number of bicycles. In Beijing and Shanghai, on the main arteries, they have a separate lane dedicated to bicycles on each side of a large highway. This is another kindergarten in Shanghai. We visited a huge farmer's market. You're seeing here just a small portion of the huge market that existed there. We visited a local family for lunch in their apartment in a high-rise apartment building. The gentleman on the left was the person who made the lunch for us. He was a retired chef. This is the Shanghai train station where we boarded a train to Suzhou. Please note the Pepsi sign on the sphere at the left. This is the Suzhou train station, a town where they have several canals. We begin our boat trip on the Grand Canal and go as far as the Watergate. We visited a silk spinning factory. Adult moths lay eggs, the caterpillars hatch, they are fed mulberry leaves for a month. They spin cocoons which can contain up to 3,000 feet of silk. The cocoons are heated to kill the pupae, and then they extract the filaments. Reeling combines filaments from several cocoons. Real silk is made into silk yarn by throwing the threads together as in spinning. Twin cocoons are not suitable for making normal silk thread. In this factory, they stretch them out and use them for filling a quilt. After 3 nights in Shanghai, we fly to Wuhan, shown by the broken line west of Shanghai. Wuhan is where we intend to get on our boat to travel down the Yangtze River. At the hotel where we were having dinner, there were 2 wedding receptions in progress. I took a picture of only one of the couples. This band was made up of crew members of the Princess Sheena at the pier to greet us. Again, remember my poor pronunciation of Chinese words. The Princess Sheena from China Regal Cruises had a passenger capacity of 288, but we only had 140 passengers on this trip. There were 71 with Grand Circle Travel, and probably a similar number with Saga from Great Britain. The Yangtze River is the 3rd longest river in the world, beginning in Tibet and traveling 3,828 miles to the ocean. We traveled only 840 miles, spending 5 nights aboard ship. We passed through the Gezo Dam and entered the Xiling Gorge. This is the Xiling Gorge. We arrived at Sanduping village, which is the site of the Three Gorges Dam. The Three Gorges Dam is the largest hydroelectric project in the world. It has a length of 1¼ miles and a height of 600 feet, not the highest dam in the world. The water height will be 570 feet above sea level. The project will submerge 13 cities, 140 towns, 1,352 villages, 657 factories, and approximately 75,000 acres of cultivated land. It will result in the relocation of 1.3 million or more people. It will provide about 15% of China's electricity and hopefully reduce the severity of flooding of the Yangtze River. We proceed through the ship locks. We are entering the Lesser Three Gorges area. This is the new bridge at Badong. The old one has been removed because it would be underwater. In the Badong area, we take a ferry boat to the Shenong Stream, which is 36 miles long. Here we are heading upstream. We transfer to peapod boats, poled and pulled by men called trackers. This is our guide on the Shenong Stream. You can see the trackers on the right pulling the boat along in the shallows. This is the head tracker on our boat, which I believe could take 8 passengers. This is the gathering of the boats at the upper end of the stream. We are heading downstream back to the Yangtze. We are back on the Yangtze at the Wu Gorge. We come to the Kutang Gorge. We come to Fenji City in a coal mining area where barges fill with coal from these repositories. This is one of the shows put on by the ship's crew. Including singers and dancers. This is a model of the Three Gorges Dam project. This is in the home of a displaced family in Wangxian. She rents out the third floor to make a little extra money. In these homes, there is usually very little decoration on the walls, but she was so proud of the thing that she had won, she pushed it onto the wall and was very proud of it. This is her house. This is an old farmhouse being used as an exhibit. It is no longer occupied. This is an area where buildings have been raised and will be raised before flooding reaches this height along the river. These three shots are on the bridge of the Princess Sheena. A few of us learn a Chinese folk dance taught by the woman on the left. This was another show by the ship's crew. These are views along the river toward Chongqing. Chongqing is at the end of the curved, solid line going west in the photo. Chongqing is the largest city in China. The city is built on steep slopes, and we see very few bicycles in this city. We visit the Stillwell Museum, where we see a demonstration of Chinese painting. We hear a lecture on Vinegar Joe Stillwell, the Flying Tigers, and the Burma Road. Here we are at the Great Hall, just above the People's Square. We visit a zoo in Chongqing. The giant panda is a bear relative, while the lesser panda, the red or common panda, is a relative of the raccoon. We fly from Chongqing to Xi'an, shown by the broken line heading north in the center of the photo. Whenever we take a side tour on this entire trip, there are 35 people in our particular group. Here we are visiting the mausoleum where Emperor Qin Shi Huang is buried, with 6,400 life-size terracotta warriors individually sculpted from live models. There are warriors, archers, infantrymen, horses, chariots, etc. Notice the crowds of people in the background on the other side of the building. Here's Helen near the end of this particular building. Some of them were in horse-drawn chariots, some had spears, swords, and some had crossbows. The bodies are hollow, attached to solid legs. The ears, beard, and armor were attached separately. The whole figure was then fired in a pottery oven. The population of China is estimated to be over 1.3 billion people, which comprises about a quarter of the world's inhabitants. I thought that they were all with us for this week. This was a holiday week, and they came from all over China. We attended a dinner theater in the Tang Dynasty Theater Restaurant. It was a cultural entertainment including instrumental selections as well as singing. The meal was very good, and the rice wine was pretty good too. We visit the Jianfu temple area where the small wild goose pagoda is located. It houses Buddhist scriptures brought from India. The park-like area has other buildings and is used for relaxing. And other things, such as this orchestra. We visit a lacquerware factory. This man is actually dyeing cloth in the factory. This artisan was painting lacquerware. One of many examples of finished lacquerware. A sign at the entrance to the factory. This is Helen on top of the city wall. It was built in the 1300s. It is approximately 36 feet high and from 36 to 42 feet wide at the top. The wall is from 45 to 54 feet wide at the base. This is a view into one of the squares from the top of the wall. Each of the four sides is about 2 miles long with a gateway and 3 towers. This is a view of the bell tower through one of the gateways at the bottom of the wall. This is a view of the bell tower in the center of the town. And this is a view of the drum tower in the center of town. After 2 nights in Xi'an, we fly to Guilin. This was one view of a nightly show performed in our hotel representing several Chinese minority nationalities. This is a courtyard in one building of an orphanage in Guilin. There are a number of buildings housing about 300 children. I took no photos of the occupants, attempting to preserve their privacy. On the 3rd floor, there was a large nursery in the central area. Many of these infants were awaiting surgery for cleft lip. Smaller rooms around the nursery housed toddlers. Other floors and buildings housed children of various ages. Oddly enough, the 1st floor of the building housed elderly people who were indigent. I did not take any photos in this area either. This is a view of the reflection in the water of the Reed Flute Cave in Guilin. Guilin is 1/3 of the way up from the bottom on that dotted line. We spent one day on the Li River from Guilin to Yangshou. Note the water buffalo on the bank of the river. The unusual mountains and the mist along this river have inspired Chinese landscape artists for centuries. We did see some cormorant fishermen docking their boats along the river. We visit a tea research center in Guilin. There are hundreds of varieties of tea. The Chinese were drinking tea as early as the 11th century BC. By about 760 AD, tea was a normal drink in China. It arrived in Europe in small amounts around 1640. During the 1700s, the amounts increased dramatically. Much of it was shipped from Guangzhou, which the British called Canton. She is crushing the tea leaves before they are dried. The finest green tea, which is unfermented, is picked in early spring when the leaves are still tiny buds. The tea master was preparing teas for us to sample. Fresh boiled water was considered essential to properly prepare the tea. This man was preparing rice paddies for planting. He was a month late in this chore because they had had so much rain he couldn't get the job done earlier. This was the entrance to a farmer's home and yard near Guilin. It contained the bare necessities. This pig was in one of the buildings in the backyard. Other buildings contained other animals. In front of a shop in a nearby town, they were playing a game I didn't recognize. After 2 nights in Guilin, we fly to Hong Kong, shown by the lowest broken line in the bottom center of the photo. This is Hong Kong Island from Kowloon, where our hotel was located. This is part of Hong Kong Island. This is the Aberdeen Village area in Kowloon. In this jewelry factory that we visited, we spent too much time in the showroom to suit me. This was a gathering of young people near our hotel in the central area of Kowloon. I never found out what they were celebrating. This is a mosque at the junction of Nathan Road and the street from our hotel. I wondered how they felt about that billboard at the bus stop in front of the mosque. A Catholic church a short distance from our hotel. A shop a very short distance from our hotel. Another shop in the same area. A fountain out behind the hotel. The park area, short distance from the hotel. Hong Kong Island from Kowloon. On the promenade of the Chinese movie stars in Kowloon. After 3 nights in Hong Kong, we fly home, flying 15.5 hours. The broken line on the right side of the photo represents part of this flight. The entire itinerary was scheduled through Grand Circle Travel and was escorted by our program director, Gary, for the entire 3 weeks. At our American farewell dinner, the steak, etc. was excellent. I had to try the snake wine, but it was not to my taste. The next several pictures were taken on a previous trip to a small area including Hong Kong, Shenzhen, and Guangzhou, also arranged by Grand Circle Travel. Again, our hotel was located in Kowloon, but was only about 200 feet from the Star Ferry. Here we are above Hong Kong on Victoria Peak. Here we are at Repulse Bay. I believe this was a candy shop, but my memory is not very good. The lunch at this restaurant was really very good, regardless of this lady's expression. Hong Kong Island from the Star Ferry at night. A view of one corner of the harbor. This is the bird market in the New Territories. This is in the flower market. This is at the fish market. All of these markets were adjacent to the harbor. A street vendor from whom we purchased items to make our lunch later. Looking toward the Central District. We are in the produce market area. Our program director, who you saw in the first photo of Repulse Bay, took some of us on a little tour to familiarize us with the public transportation available. We left Kowloon on the subway. We got a reduced rate for seniors. We then transferred to a double-decker tram, again at a reduced rate, which took us to the central part of the island. This is a shot of a pharmacy from the top of the double-decker tram. I am a pharmacist. We then took the Star Ferry back to Kowloon. Since we are over 65, we get a free ride on the ferry. Another day, we took the ferry to Shenkao in Guangdong province. We boarded a bus to tour Shenzhen. Many people who work in Hong Kong commute from Shenzhen now because of the high cost of an apartment in Hong Kong. This is at a kindergarten in Shenzhen. We visited the Panda Hall, essentially a little zoo in a large park area. The great panda is related to the bear. The lesser panda is related to the raccoon. A nearby museum had replicas of the terracotta warriors in their gift shop. We continued by bus to Guangzhou, where we had lunch in this restaurant. These are views of the Sikh Bayan temple. This is the memorial to Dr. Sun Yat-sen. We returned to Kowloon by train, then flew to Thailand for 2 weeks.